Antisemitism. Take it away.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much, Kim. So as Kim mentioned, my name is Kelly Kim. I'm a therapeutic team member at the Institute for Family Services and also a coordinator for this year's conference. I'm so excited to introduce our next presenter, Dr. David Surrey, whose very timely and very relevant panel is titled Beyond Conflation, Decentering Zionism While Confronting Anti-Semitism. Dr. Surrey has a background in anthropology, which has allowed him to investigate various topics such as globalization, desegregation, ethnicity, immigration, housing, urban history, education, and the Vietnam era. He has been fortunate enough to do research with, not on, educators, tenant organizers in New Jersey and New York, Jewish and Palestinian activists for equity in the occupied territories, as well as Vietnam veterans and resistors. Through combined anthropology and community activism, the cultures with which he works are active parts of the research and outcomes. Dr. Surrey is currently an officer and a founding member of Northern New Jersey Jewish Voice for Peace, a group that works for Palestinian rights in the Middle East. So welcome, Dr. Surrey, and I will hand it over to you.
Thank you. And I'm really honored to be part of this conference. Also, if I am talking too much, I know I'm supposed to go for 20 minutes. I could either go on forever or 5 minutes. Please just put in the chat if you want me to stop or you have comments to make along the way. Otherwise, we'll have a discussion at the end. I'm starting my clock now. Okay, just a little bit more of my background. I'm a Jew from Missouri. We're the only Jewish family in town. And we did face anti-Semitism, but it's very, very different than anti-Zionism. And I was fortunate enough that one of my first rabbis didn't believe in Israel and may not even believe in God. I've been looking for another rabbi like that ever since. So here we go. To understand the Middle East today, we got to go back at least 1,000 years, 3,000 years. And why is my clicker not working? Hold on. Okay. If I were God, even if there is a God, I would be mad at how my name has been and is being misused then and now. Of course, and this is pure candidness, only my dog thinks I'm a God. But what I believe is as an ambivalent Jew is the best gift we can accept in the spirit of the Lord is to think about justice. And here's what I think. The Old Testament, while offering a strong foundation for justice, also serves sadly and is used sadly as a blueprint for colonialism, genocide, and ethnic cleansing. The international definitions of genocide include genocide means any of the following acts which are committed with the intent to destroy in a whole or part a national, ethnic, religious, racial, or religious group. 5 categories: killing members of the group, causing serious bodily harm and mental harm to members of the group, deliberately inflicting on the group conditions of life calculated to bring about destruction, imposing measures intended to prevent births, and forcibly transferring children of the group to another group. That could be said today about Gaza, about Ukraine, many other places. It also could be said about the Old Testament and justified in the Old Testament. Moses. The Jews were exiled for 400 years, and God said you could come back. When the Lord your God has driven them out before you, do not stay in your heart. Because of my righteousness, the Lord has promised me in to possess this land. So he's getting justification for he couldn't go because he'd been bad, but for the Jewish people to go in, not Israel, because there's a country there, Canaan. Oh, here we go today. Netanyahu says basically the same thing. Therefore, when the Lord your God has given you rest from all your enemies around you in the land the Lord your God is giving you for an inheritance, you could blot them out. Now, both of these are straight out of the book of Deuteronomy. So one of the things that I think is so important when we look at any current situation, we have to go back in time. Actually, when I grow up, I want to either be a historian or a Major League Baseball player. I'm still waiting for offers on either. So today, this is Gaza, with 60% of the land occupied by Israel as a quote buffer zone. After the Six-Day War, you can see the little red green spots, Palestinian territories greatly reduced.
Hi, Dr.
David,
Surrey. I'm
just
so
oh
sorry
god.
to interrupt, but you're
Please,
not presenting your slides,
I am not. Oh,
which I think would be
yes,
helpful.
it would be very helpful. We have to slide share, right?
Yes,
Can I do that?
you should have the capability to.
Yeah,
Oh,
on the bottom of the screen, you should have a green arrow pointing upwards. And if you click that, it's going to
actually,
allow you to share.
oh yeah, got it. I'm so sorry.
Don't be sorry at all.
Uh, Screen one. Do you see my slides now?
We do not. I think you have to choose a
Oh, I
different.
know. I got it. I got
Oh,
it.
perfect. Great.
I don't have it. Wait, I got some blurry stuff over there. Just one sec. I will have it. Does this count as my 20 minutes?
You're doing great.
It's that much.
I see PowerPoint on the bottom. It's an orange circled application, and if you go to your right, it's next to the Zoom one.
Yeah. Okay.
Oh,
So
that's not PowerPoint, that's PDF. So you got to go to
share
um you've already
this.
shared, you're sharing, that's good. But at the bottom of your screen, not within the Zoom application, you're gonna have I see the PowerPoint icon all the way over to the right on the
Okay.
bottom. Yeah, keep going to your right.
You go to the
Perfect,
power.
perfect, perfect. There it is. One more. There you go.
Aha.
Yes.
Now how do
And then just click don't allow on the screen where it says allow, blah, blah, blah.
where
Just
is it?
so right in the middle of the screen, it says allow or don't allow. Just click don't allow.
Okay, I'm not seeing that.
Oh, just click right where you are. Just click. Just click right now. Oh,
Whoop, no good?
no, did you see the little pop-up on the screen right now? It says allow PDF expert to find devices on your local networks.
No.
No. Because that's what we see.
Let me
Oh, you know
start.
what? Just click on the PowerPoint and then maybe it'll disappear.
Okay, instead, what I've done is disappear everything. So share. Uh-oh. Okay, on the PDF expert, do I put allow or don't allow?
Don't allow.
Okay, then I go over to the PowerPoint.
Yep.
Okay, and that should, oh, share.
But now you got to go to share.
Okay, which I'm not seeing again.
So that's going to be, it's on the
Okay,
Zoom
got it, got it,
application.
got it.
Yeah, wonderful.
Then where's my PowerPoint? Here's my PowerPoint. Do we see it?
We do. And then you're just going to want to go up to uh, uh, it says slides, because right now we can see the whole PowerPoint application. So you're going to go over, I think you're going to click on slides on the top left in the um, corner here. Yeah, there you go. That way you should be able, no, it's not. Okay, I'm sorry.
I
I'm
think it's
just,
under slideshow up at the top.
Oh, okay,
oh,
yeah.
great. Thank you.
Slideshow,
Thanks
and
so much.
Sure,
then
sure.
what I hit slideshow or
Yeah, there's a text next to animations, then slideshow.
how's that?
Perfect. Continue to share.
Yes.
Amazing. Wonderful. Thank you so
Okay,
much.
so you heard my blah, blah, blah. And I talked about God's name being misused. And genocide, I gave the definition. And then I talked about Moses and Donald Trump, both using Deuteronomy to justify um, what they're doing, what they did, and what they're doing. And now this is important. These are the maps. This was Gaza today, but 60% is not even controlled by Gaza, it's Israel. After the Six-Day War, you see Gaza and little strips approaching the West Bank. Before the Six-Day War, you see um, more territory. After the conquest or independence, you see almost the same as before the 67 war. Israel territory is blue. Gaza is green. The UN plan, which was not very fair to the Palestinians, still gave more land to the Palestinians than they have today. Before the UN plan, you could see that almost the whole territory was controlled by Palestinians. Before the Balfour Conference, there was very little Jewish control. Ottoman Empire, no Jews basically. Now, after Jericho, these areas in pink were taken over by Joshua and his people. Before Jericho, as I said before, there was a whole independent nation, a nation that we don't talk about, we don't learn about. What we learn about is the song Joshua Fought the Battle of Jericho. And even before that, you see God's name being used to take over the lands. And God had promised the Jews who were hanging out in Egypt for 400 years that they could come back to the promised land. That's in Genesis. And to get claims to the land and to the Jewish heritage, you have the first version of the chosen people. There were brothers Esau and Jacob. Esau was the oldest. In the womb, Rebekah decided that she was going to favor her younger son. So one day when Esau came back from the open country hunger, now Esau was daddy's favorite and was promised all the land. He was hungry. So he said to Jacob, his brother, could I have something to eat? And Jacob said, sure, but you got to sell me your birthright. And Esau, who was really hungry, what good is it to me? I don't want it. So Jacob, he swore to him an oath, selling his birthright to Jacob. Once again, you see fraud justified in Genesis as a foundation for what is going on today. And it's not just Israel. It's, like I said earlier, the blueprint for genocide, for ethnic cleansing, is all in the Old Testament, as well as some good things too. So they still had to trick daddy. And by then, Isaac was pretty blind. And Esau, the oldest, was a hairy guy. So his mother, and mothers get blamed a lot in the Old Testament, took Esau's clothes and put on Jacob's skins of goats around his hands and necks, making him appear to be hungry. So Jacob lies. My father, he said, yes, my son, who are you, Esau or Jacob? Ah. And Jacob replied, a lie, I am Esau. Jacob said, I am Esau. But are you really Esau, my son? Yes, he lied. So then, may many nations become your servants, may they bow down to you. All you curse, you will be cursed, and all you bless will be blessed. So again, deception goes into the chosen people, and you have a divine right. Now, I don't have my full screen on, but most of you heard of the song Joshua Fought the Battle of Jericho? Kelly, are they raising their hands or nodding? I don't know. Anyhow, is anybody out there? Yes. You've heard the Battle of Jericho, yes? Thumbs up?
We're here, yes.
We're getting a lot of thumbs up.
Yes, 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 yes.
That's called group participation, as it was when I was trying to figure out how to get on the slides. Did we think about who lived in Jericho and what happened to them? God certainly did. He delivered Jericho into Joshua's hands, gave all the silver, bronze, and iron to the Lord's treasurer, and then they destroyed the people with the sword, every living thing, men, women, young, old, cattle, sheep, and donkeys. That is ethnic cleansing. Then, and this I didn't know till much, much later after I flunked out a Hebrew school or whatever I did. They didn't stop at Jericho. That map I showed you before of Canaan, God said, first of all, if anybody tries to rebuild this stuff, I'm going to kill their firstborn and I'm going to kill their secondborn. Then the Lord said, Joshua, don't stop at Jericho, stretch out. First to Ai, and the army went to Ai, and then the Lord killed, they fell on 12,000 men and women, killed the entire population. Ethnic cleansing justified in the book of Joshua. Then they went further. Every city in Canaan was captured. All the inhabitants were killed, as were the livestock and everything living. Nothing was left alive. Now, we might know about the Battle of Jericho, but we don't know about going beyond the walls of Jericho. Maybe some of you do. I did not. And every man, woman, child, cattle, and goat were destroyed, all under the governance, the direction of God. That's why I said in the beginning, God might be really angry at how his name is being used, or he might be a very evil character. I don't know. Okay, and I just want to make sure that it is not, we're talking about many, many nations. And these are some examples. The Crusaders killed the Muslims killed the Crusaders, all in God's name. And even in the 21st century, under the guise of religion, the Islamic State justified murders, rapes, and slavery. So all these atrocities, and you could think of many, many more, were done in God's name. And then my mouse okay, here we go. United States is, I was going to say particularly guilty of this, but I would say as guilty. I would say more guilty. I'm not going to mix the word. Plymouth Colony, where 90% of the indigenous population died of smallpox. That was cool because it pleased God to visit these Indians with a great sickness. And some mortality. John Winthrop, one of the prominent citizens, said God was making room for the settlers, had cleared our title to the place. John Cotton, the destruction was a sign of God. Again, using God's name. Thomas Jefferson, under God's name, we must get rid of the indigenous people. We should never cease pursuing them while one remained on the face of the earth. Then a few of us, many of us, I would say, have heard of the Trail of Tears. And we know often about the Cherokee Trail of Tears. What's not taught in many schools is they were one of many groups that were stripped. Andrew Jackson decided that every Native American group on the east of the Mississippi should be moved. 60,000 people were moved, and on the Trail of Tears, of the 16,000, 4,000 died of starvation along the way. And of course, Manifest Destiny. There you see the angel of the Lord looking over. Missouri Senator Thomas Hart Benton. I'm again ashamed to be from Missouri sometimes. And this is right after the United States had seized parts of Mexico, including California, Colorado, Utah, Arizona, and New Mexico, and 10 years after they stole Texas. The white was obeying the divine command to subdue and replenish the earth. But going coast to coast was not enough. President McKinley said, we must take over Hawaii. That is more important than California. And while we're at it, by God's will and grace, we'll do the same for the Philippines, as our fellow men for whom Christ also died. What virtually no one is taught in school, in God's name, the United States Occupational Army in the next 3 years killed 300,000 Filipinos. But it was okay because God said it was okay. Last week, Donald Trump decided we had to save Christianity, at least Christianity in Nigeria. Do things to Nigeria that Nigeria is not going to happen. There were Christians killed in Nigeria, but he's going to come in guns blazing and destroy the terrorist thugs that hurt our cherished Christians. At the same time, he was ignoring that 60,000 Muslims are also killed there. the genocide in Sudan, Myanmar, China, Ethiopia, Afghanistan. And if I had more than 20 minutes, I'd keep going. Trump just decides that the Christians are worth saving. So, anti-Zionism is not anti-Semitism. Anti-Zionism is opposing the political ideology of Zionism, which resulted in the expulsion of 750,000 indigenous Palestinians. Standing against the creation of a nation state with exclusive rights for Jews above all others. Anti-Zionism supports liberation for justice of the Palestinian people, including their right to return, just as God had said to Moses, you have a right to return. Anti-Zionists believe in a future where all the people on the land live in freedom, safety, and equity. Opposition to the political movement of Zionism of the state of Israel, and this is extremely important, is no different than opposing the political ideology of any other nation state, such as colonialism and imperialism. That's anti-Zionism. This is all from the Jewish Voice for Peace. But not in there at all, although we've been accused of this many times, is calling for the destruction of Israel. And my son, at his 13th bar mitzvah, for you non-believers in the room, at the bar mitzvah, you read a portion of the Torah that's assigned to you that day. And he actually had the story of Joshua. And his speech, he said, and he hadn't told us about this, it was a test that God had given the Jews then, and we failed. And it's a test that God has given us now, and we are still failing. Pretty smart kid. Anti-Zionism, and I'm almost done with this part, is attacking Jews for being Jewish or blaming the Jewish people for the actions of the Israeli government. We are not responsible for the actions of the Israeli government unless we're quiet about it. That's why we fight anti-Semitism within and as part of broader struggles against oppression. The Bund in the 19th century, its core principle was a belief that Jewish liberation would become participating in a socialist movement, I guess they were supporting Mandami, around the globe rather than leaving for Palestine. Hannah Arendt said the attempt to create a Jewish state has to be a spectacular defeat. Anti-Semitism is prejudice or hatred of Jews. Now I'm going to get reported to my president tomorrow or maybe today, by the ADL, as I have every time I've spoken out, because they say I'm a self-hating bad Jew. Within Judaism, and this is so important, in the United States, in Israel, and around the world, there's been strong voices and movements for Jews against Zionism. Here we have a group from the Jewish Voice of Peace on the left taking over the Statue of Liberty. Never again, they say. The world is watching. If you look right in the middle, you can see my wife. Oh, here's a better shot. Here we are marching Jewish Force for Peace. Very strong in the occupation. We're Jews and we're against Israel. That is anti-Zionism. That is against the misuse of God's name, whether you believe in God or not. So that's where I'm going to stop. So I'm going to stop sharing there. Okay. Do we have questions?
Thank you so much, Dr. Surrey. So we'll open up the chat box now for individuals who want to either share questions or even just comments. So the chat is now open. I can start us off first, Dr. Surrey. So thank you so much. And you really went through such an extensive history of individuals and groups who wield religion as a means for ethnic cleansing and colonization. And we see this exploitation of faith up until today. And as you mentioned, specifically with the conflation of anti-Zionism and anti-Semitism. I also know you're very active just in the academic institution and also with Northern New Jersey Jewish Voice for Peace. So if we even think a little bit about this history of youth organizers and student activists. I'm just curious how, as someone who's so embedded in these academic institutions, how have you seen a lot of these student-led resistance movements kind of continue to flourish and evolve despite this very continuous silencing and criminalization?
I'm glad you didn't ask me that question a year ago. Students were not, there were in the bigger universities involvement, we know about the sit-ins, but a lot of students just didn't think there was any hope for either party. And one of the wonderful things with New York being the exception, one of the wonderful things about this election is young people came out in huge numbers, voted in huge numbers, and didn't say, yuck, I have to vote for the least evil, but showed a real capacity to influence policy. The young voters, the minorities, were so much more engaged and shifted away from Trump. On the other hand, St. Peter's I shouldn't say that. Yeah, I could say that, has a number of undocumented students. They can't get publicly involved because they're putting their families at risk. They're putting maybe themselves for risk, but they do support. We have networks of lawyers, food banks that way. And I see much more excitement now than I did a year ago. I wish I saw it with my colleagues. And we're again a small Jesuit college with a lot of conservative people, but I do see it around the nation.
Thank you, Dr. Surrey.
Just a big shift from last year, Eden.
Definitely. We also have a question in the chat from Hasmik. Hasmik asked, what did Moses do that is similar to Trump?
Oh, Moses was promised that this land was his, promised by God in the Bible. Trump says we have a right to intervene. We have a right to bomb, and he's using God. We have to go save the Christians. We have to save the American way in his Christian thing. So they're both using God's name. I had in the picture up there of Trump holding the Bible. He's such a religious man. He was holding it upside down because he didn't know better.
I also want to point out we have a few comments. So we have Dr. Vishanti Supal who said, thank you, David. Excellent presentation. Also, Dr. Majda Zal, who similarly commented that she's grateful for the historical timeline to demonstrate that the building of Zionism has really been centuries in the making.
Mm-hmm.
And then I also see that Dr. Supal has her hand raised. So I want to invite her to come on camera and then we can also spotlight you.
I just want to say, in this moment when so many people are so afraid to stand up and talk, in support of Palestine, I want to say thank you for your courage. I know this is perhaps a small bit of courage compared to all else that you are doing, but nevertheless, it touches my heart. I'm deeply grateful for it. Just one question. It's related to the Moses question. It is said that Moses were leading, the Israelites from slavery in Egypt.
Yeah.
But historically, was there slavery in Egypt at that time?
That's debated. Historically, we know there was a Jericho. My background's anthropology. There were people doing forced labor. Maybe the Jews were part of that people, maybe they were not. We get the story of Joseph and all the people going to Israel. Then God talked to Joseph and said, build granaries. And it sounds like slavery is a complicated term because slavery in the United States was very different than slavery in other countries. Slaves in other countries, including Egypt, while not a good career choice, you could have rights, you could vote, you could even hold a lot of power. So if there was slavery, it wasn't anywhere near as degrading as the slavery we had here. So it's a historical debate. There were people that were probably not there by choice, but the conditions were probably not as hard as we saw in the movement, the Ten Commandments.
Thank you.
And also an important note, Charlton Heston played Moses in the Ten Commandments, and he became the leader of the NRA. So that was divinely stated.
Not a coincidence. David, can you talk about some of the strategies that JVP uses to try to support, I'm just looking at the program, and one of the objectives that I know directly addresses the work that you do and that you co-lead and co-organize with so many other people in the community to support options for autonomy and liberation for children and families of Palestinian identities. Can you talk about some of those solidarity efforts that JVP is involved in?
Yeah. One of the big ones is the BDS, the boycott of Israel, products made in Israel, which unfortunately is illegal in 37 states, including New Jersey.
Oh.
That's, so boycott products, that's a big one, and that seems to be hurting. Another is co-sponsoring programs. Now in Montclair, where you live and I live, we've got a great deal of opposition from the churches and from the rabbis in particular. We've tried to hold meetings in many churches and we've been denied that. The Quakers have come through very big. Co-sponsoring films, co-sponsoring community groups. And now I know we're about to start a big food drive for Palestinians living in the US.
Thank you. And I think part of that is, you and other elders in the community really
Calling
calling.
me old? Just because I turned 76 last week.
All you and all the other wise folks in our extended communities that are calling on, people of justice to really act on their claimed values and their claimed principles. And I think that's something that I really admire and appreciate. Not only the willingness, but it's reminds me of what happens in Indigenous Hawaiian communities when they were resisting and continue to resist takeover and occupation of lands for things like the building of more telescopes on Mauna Kea, which is one of the most sacred lands indigenous lands in the Big Island of Hawaii. And what the elders did was to really stand in the front line and to ensure that they were the ones who were having, creating the red line that the developers and in this case military and police had to confront. And so of course we've seen that with the water protectors and others. So I think that idea of really learning from those indigenous practices about the strength that comes from people literally locking arms, and I've seen you all do that, whether it's been to invite someone to speak about the Quaker Friends School at the local library, or the reader of a children's book to tell the story of a Palestinian child remembering her grandfather's garden, and all of the other things that have been framed as anti-Semitic as a way to demonize and silence Palestinian existence, in the ways that I think JVP and others have really come together to ensure that that is not the case.
Yeah, I think that's true, and thank you. But also, we have white privilege in the United States, big time white privilege. My wife was part of a group that got arrested on Yom Kippur for sitting on the Brooklyn Bridge. They were all moved to one side of the jails. They were given priority in the courts, and they were all let go without a fine for blocking traffic. If I were young, female, black, brown, that would not be the case. So as much as we do, I mean, I'm not demeaning what we do, but we know the consequences are not going to be nearly as harsh as it will to the others. And that's so important for people of my generation. And it took a while for me to understand that this privilege is amazing. And sadly, we don't use it enough. And again, the courage of the young people is just outstanding.
Thank you, Dr. Surrey. And I also know Dr. Supal had her hand raised. I'm not sure, Dr. Supal, if you want to come on and if you would also like to ask
Yes,
another question.
this is a request. I mean, we're talking social activism and advocacy here. I put in the chat our South African National Social Work Educator Association's submission to the International Association of Schools of Social Work. Actually, we made submissions and calls right in October 2023, just as the South African government took Israel to the International Court of Justice and so on. And 2 years later, the International Association of Schools of Social Work have not taken a stand, despite our ethical principles and values that we claim to uphold. But more importantly, they have members on the board, from the Israeli Association of Schools and Departments of Social Work that have not condemned the atrocities in Gaza, and they still have the privilege of position on the board. So you will see the statement there. And what I'm calling for, I'm sure CSWE as a collective, it might not work from what I understand, right? But individual schools, can write to ISSW expressing its disappointment. We are saying as a collective in South Africa, we will withdraw our membership. But whatever action you want to take, you can take, but at least let them know, at the highest possible level, you represent our values and our principles, and neutrality or silence is complicity. So please, it's a
And
request.
you may not get the administration of your schools to do that, but as faculty members and I would say students, that is still an extremely powerful voice. I'm not proud of much of anthropology's history because it too is based on exploitation, but the American Anthropological Association came out against Zionism, which, but that was a grassroots building up, certainly was not from our higher ups. But I think voices of students and your students and the faculty are creating the next generation of social workers.
We can do it. I've done it as an individual as well.
Yeah, also, yeah.
We could, whatever the sphere of our influence is, I think we must use it. And thank you.
Thank you.
Kelly, I'm going to turn this over to you to close this out.
Yes, so I just copy and pasted the statement again that Dr. Supal had sent a little bit earlier. Also, we have a comment from Ariel. Thank you so much for this insightful context and delineation on the current discourse. It was extremely meaningful to hear as another proud Jew against genocide and Zionism.
Good. Thank you. Thank you all. I love this opportunity. It gave me a chance to hear your feedback and put my thoughts together.
Thank you, Dr. Surrey. And I think, Kim, we can transition.
Sure. Thank you so much, Dave.